I saw the charges hit my dashboard and my heart stopped. That's the moment I realized my world was unraveling. I'm Tony Russo, founder of Green Cycle Tech, a Portland startup that turns urban waste into garden soil. At 35, I'd poured everything. My savings, my time, my passion into building this company from a 2-person garage operation into a regional green tech leader. My sister Sophie was the one I trusted most. She'd been my cheerleader, my co-pilot, until the day she covertly used my customer data to open a string of buy now, pay later accounts and rack up $25,000 in unauthorized charges that exploded on my credit almost overnight. Growing up in a blended Oregon-Italian household, Sunday brunch at Blue Spruce Cafe was sacred. Nana's peach cobbler, Dad's espresso poured over his homemade biscotti, and my mom, Elena, presiding like a queen over our noisy table of arguments. Sophie was always the golden child model student, golden voice in choir, the one who'd gotten a scholarship to UC Berkeley, and then landed a high-visibility wellness influencer contract. I took a different path, MIT degree tech world, then pivoted to Green Cycle, when I realized my heart lay in environmental solutions. That choice earned me the family disappointment label, no big salary, no fancy title, just a garage full of composters and solar panels. When Sophie begged to join my company as a brand ambassador, I hesitated. I remembered her unrelenting ambition, how she'd flirted her way into a millionaire heir's heart 5 years ago, then thrown priceless china at him in a Belvedere District bistro when he talked about her spiritual growth instead of buying her another Birkin. She'd lost that marriage and her dignity, but she was charming, and her followers on Sophie Wellness were the exact demographic for my green tech mission. So I brought her in. She smiled, thanked me in a stream of Instagram stories, and I thought maybe she could give back. Instead, she secretly extracted every ounce of trust I gave her. It started innocuously. "Tony, could you cover this promo event, Tony? I need a new laptop for content editing. Tony, this chunk of shipping cost because YouTube demonetized my channel." I'd grit my teeth but pay, reminding myself it was for our shared vision, Green Garden Zero Waste. Then, one Saturday afternoon, while I was at a community hackathon, my phone buzzed with dozens of fraud alerts from my bank. I logged into my personal dashboard and watched frozen as I saw $8,400 at the Upscale Health Food Co-op, $6,200 at Monochrome Boutique, $4,500 in airline tickets to Miami, $5,000 for a digital detox retreat that sounded as phony as a $5 bill. In total, $25,000. My startup account had been drained. I dropped everything and raced home to our shared loft in the Pearl District. The afternoon sky was the deep Pacific blue of early spring cherry blossoms drifting across Powell Boulevard like confetti. I burst through our front door to find Sophie sprawled on the mid-century modern couch, filming an ASMR morning routine video whispering about finding your authentic self by detoxing from toxic family energy. I grabbed my phone and held it up like an accusing mirror. "Explain this," I demanded. Her fingers stuttered on the screen. She looked up, eyes glossy but calculating. "Oh, those just some Insta fans requesting the retreat, so I prepaid as a gesture." Her voice was smooth, too smooth. "My apologies. I forgot to reimburse you." But I'd already seen the emails she'd repeatedly used the company's API keys I'd trusted her with to authorize the BNPL loans under my name. "You used my platform's own infrastructure to steal from me," I said, voice cracking. She set down her phone, a predatory smile flickering. "Steal, Tony, everything I've done was to help our brand. Do you really think a few $1,000s matters when we're talking about saving the planet?" My blood froze. My life's work reduced to a petty cash advance. I had to swallow bile as I pictured every solar-powered composter I'd funded with that money. My heart pounded like a sledgehammer against my ribs. That's when Maria Lee walked in, my mom's best friend and our unofficial family mediator. a 64-year-old Vietnamese-American community leader who'd been volunteering at our hackathons planting urban trees after our demo days. She carried a canvas roll under her arm. "Tony, I think you need to see this," she said, unrolling a printout of flowcharts and code logs. "Look, here's your database, here's the API call records, here's the bank's fraud report." Sophie masked the headers to look like vendor transactions. Sophie's face paled as the charts revealed her betrayal in cold digital lines. I can explain," she stammered, but there were no words to repair the breach of trust. Moments later, we sat around the worn oak table at Blue Spruce Cafe, this time without the usual laughter. The brunch rush roared behind us, baristas steaming oat milk foam and the hiss of the espresso machine, the unsympathetic soundtrack to my unraveling. Dad scrolled his phone eyes tight. Sophie had already called him, begging for forgiveness. "Papa, I made a mistake, but Tony is overreacting. Can't you talk some sense into him?" But sense died on that oak table. Maria held up a single green seed in her palm. The seed we'd all planted together last Earth Day to start a community pollinator garden. "This seed is our promise," she said. "We trust each other to nurture it." "Sophie, you've betrayed that promise." Sophie's eyes glistened. "Family first," she whispered, and I nearly laughed. So much for that old mantra. I leveled my gaze. Family first doesn't mean exploit the trust that binds us. I built a company on that trust. I placed the seed on the table. This is the green seed, our symbol. From today on, every time you think of me or this family, remember that a seed needs honest soil to grow. You poisoned ours. She sank back, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. But to me, they felt cold, just another performance. My internal core stiffened, harking back to the urban lotus motif Maria had shown me. Even in the mud, a lotus must push upward through darkness to bloom. I had to decide, do I crush this family drama like a weed, or do I find the strength to plant new roots? I pushed back my chair and felt the click-clack of metal on wood echo my resolve. "I'm going public," I announced. "Tonight at 7, I'm hosting a live stream on techforgood.us. I'll share every log, every figure, every betrayal. The community deserves to know how trust can be weaponized even in the green movement." Sophie looked ready to bolt. Dad slammed his fist on the table, once so often heard in Sunday heat of debate, but now silenced by shock. Maria nodded, proud but somber. Outside, raindrops began to speckle the cafe window, a gentle prelude to the storm I was unleashing. I gathered my things. As I stood, I placed one hand over that single green seed. "No matter what happens," I said quietly, "this seed is mine to protect. I'll show everyone what real growth looks like, even if it means tearing down the old soil first." I walked out into Portland's gray drizzle, my reflection fractured in the cafe glass, the seed secure in my palm. Tomorrow the world would hear my story. But tonight, beneath the neon sign of Blue Spruce, I felt the weight of every choice: my company's future, my reputation, and the fragile promise of the green seed waiting to bloom. And as the doors swung closed behind me, I whispered to the wind, "Let the reckoning begin." The countdown clock on my laptop blinked 15 minutes until go live. My heart thundered in my chest like a war drum. In the corner of my makeshift home studio, the Green Cycle logo glowed on a ring light backdrop. Behind me, a single potted fiddle leaf fig, Nina, I'd named her, stood as silent witness. I'd watered her myself this morning, whispering encouragement, "Grow strong, Nina, just like we must." I drew a slow breath and closed my eyes. In that half second of silence, I saw every late night coding new features, every weekend spent in community gardens with Maria Lee, every trusting smile I'd given Sophie when she first pitched her influencer deal. All of it flashing like a reel of triumph and betrayal. My finger hovered over Start Stream. Behind the scenes in the cafe where Sophie used to brunch, Dad and Mom were locked in hushed argument. My live stream link had already pinged their phones. Sophie paced their small kitchen in the Pearl District loft they'd bought with their ill-fated inheritance, her influencer ring catching the overhead pendant lights in a harsh sparkle. Mom had returned from visiting Lily's school play bruised from both physical bruises Sophie had inflicted and the emotional ones Mom herself had dished out. I clicked go live and faced the camera. Good evening, Portland and beyond. I'm Tony Russo, founder of Green Cycle Tech. Tonight, I'm here to share a story about trust, how easily it can be taken and how fiercely it can be defended. 15 viewers flickered to start employees, friends, investors tuning in out of worry, curiosity, or loyalty. Behind me, Nina's glossy leaves caught the light like emerald shields. I began to speak my voice low but steady. Last month, I discovered $25,000 of unauthorized buy now, pay later purchases charged to my personal and corporate accounts. Luxury retreats, boutique fashion, airline tickets, none of which benefited Green Cycle. Investigations revealed these charges were triggered via our own API keys. I shared the screen lines of log entries highlighted in red where Sophie's encrypted token had accessed the billing system. Here, I said, pointing. Each call matches our data. Sophie Russo, that's my sister, who had privileged access. She abused it. I paused to let the weight land. Comments scrolled. No way. Wow. Family drama. I leaned forward. I'm exposing facts, not family secrets. Trust is the currency of innovation. If we can't protect our own, how can we protect the environment we serve? I recounted how I'd confronted Sophie in our loft, how Maria Lee had delivered the printed flowcharts over brunch. I described the green seed on the cafe table and its symbolism. Potential, vulnerability, rebirth. That seed, I said, holding it up to the camera, reminds me that from broken trust, we must rebuild. But rebuilding takes accountability. At 10 minutes in, I switched to legal documents, a formal demand letter, freeze orders on Sophie's accounts, police report numbers. I explained the personal risk Green Cycle faced, API leak allegations, and possible fines for compromised user data. I'm risking my reputation, my company's future, and my family's privacy to reveal truth. I could have swept this under the rug. I chose not to. Viewers thanked me for transparency. Some expressed shock at a CEO airing siblings' dirty laundry. I clicked over to photograph Lily's science project, the one Sophie refused to help with because she was too busy building her brand. Lily's homemade terrarium glowed on the screen, miniature ferns thriving in a glass jar. I'm not ashamed to admit Lily is the real victim here. She deserves an uncle who stands by her, not one silenced by family politics. A new comment appeared. Is Sophie going to respond? I smiled, though hollowly. I invited her to join this stream at any moment. I offered to walk her through the truth live. She declined. 15 minutes later, the chat exploded. Sophie had logged in under an alias, ugh, so predictable. She typed, Tony, you're overreacting. Stop the smear campaign. I thought you cared about the cause. I read it aloud. Caring about the cause, I repeated, incredulous. Exploiting it for personal gain is not caring, it's traitorous. Green Cycle has always been about community stewardship, not cushy influencer travel. I paused, and the camera caught a gleam in my eye, my resolve sharpening like a blade. So, here's my final challenge to Sophie. Return every dollar by week's end, publicly apologize in this forum, and enroll in restitution service at our community garden program. Or I will hand all documentation to the Securities Division, the FTC, and your followers so they can decide if your brand still stands for anything real. The chat blew up, OMG. He's going nuclear. Respect. But right then, something else happened. My doorbell buzzed, my phone lit up a video call from Jordan Kim, our CTO. On his screen, stacks of code and API logs, Jordan's face looked grave. Tony, we've traced additional calls in the dead of night. Someone spoofed your admin key too. There's a second impersonator. Could be an external hacker or... His voice trailed. My pulse quickened. Was there more? Was Sophie truly alone in this, or had someone else exploited the chaos? I hesitated, torn between the righteous fury of my expose and the looming threat of a deeper breach. I nodded to Jordan off camera and then faced the audience. Folks, it's not over. While we've uncovered Sophie's abuse of our system, we're now discovering unauthorized admin-level access that may point to a larger breach. We must protect GreenCycle's entire network and our community's data. A cold draft brushed through my studio, rattling the ring light. Nina's leaves quivered. The seed in my hand rolled across the desk. Sit up straight, Tony, I thought, steeling myself. I clicked end stream. End. As the camera went dark, the chat froze mid-argument about whether Sophie should be deplatformed or rehabbed as an activist. My eyes burned with fatigue and grief. I turned and saw Jordan at my side. Maria Lee just behind him, her eyes kind but questioning. How deep does this go? She asked softly. I placed the green seed back in its tiny pot beside Nina. Deeper than I ever imagined, I whispered. My hands trembled, part fear, part exhilaration. The fight for truth had only just begun. I opened the server logs and I saw my own admin credentials being abused. My voice trembled as I spoke into the video chat with Jordan Kim, our CTO. The flickering glow of code cascaded across his glasses. He adjusted his webcam, bringing up a heat map of server access attempts. Look here, Tony. This pattern is different from Sophie's BNPL calls. These are root-level overrides executed at 3 a.m. using your personal SSH key. I pressed my palm to my forehead, heart hammering. The betrayal was deeper than family drama. It was corporate sabotage masquerading as a friendly face. Who else could have access? I asked, my throat suddenly dry. Jordan shook his head. Only a handful of people, me, you, our security consultant, Alex Nguyen. My chest tightened. Alex and Nguyen, the ethical hacker we'd contracted to pen our zero-trust policy. A former white hat who'd helped us thwart DDoS attacks 6 months back. He'd signed an NDA, we'd paid him handsomely in equity, and now his mole pattern fingerprint was all over the code. I sank into the leather desk chair beside Nina, the fiddle leaf fig. The unspoken question hung between us: could someone we'd trusted be turning dark? Or had Sophie found a willing accomplice in Alex to amplify her revenge? I clenched my fists. Jordan snapshot every log and replicate it locally. I want forensics on Nguyen's account, including IP addresses, geolocation, everything. As Jordan initiated a deep scan, I closed my eyes and thought back to Saturday brunch at Blue Spruce, how Sophie had teased me about my dorky tech startup, how Alex had praised our green mission while quietly probing our API. I remembered the shared beers we'd thrown back after a hackathon, Alex slapping me on the back and calling me a visionary. Now I wondered which of those memories were real and which were a careful deception built over a year. I ended the call and took a long breath. Across the loft sat the battered oak desk where I'd once brainstormed mycelium microbiomes with my lead biologist. On that desk, the green seed still rested alongside a single origami lotus Lily had gifted me, symbols of growth and rebirth. I picked up the lotus fingers, brushing its creased edges. Even if trust shattered, perhaps we could fold ourselves back together. I dialed Maria Lee. Her voicemail picked up first. Tony, if it's about the live stream, call me back. I'll be at the community garden until sundown. I hesitated, then left a message. Maria, I need your help again. It's bigger. Call me. Minutes later, her return call crackled like static. I'm in the greenhouse. What's wrong? I explained the admin breach, the suspicion on Alex Nguyen. He was supposed to be our guardian, Maria. Now he could be the architect of our undoing. She exhaled. Meet me at the garden tonight. Bring Nina's pot, the community's watching. At 7 p.m., fog rolled over the rows of raised beds. Maria waited under the old cedar arbor, gray hair tucked under a wide-brimmed hat. She held a clipboard and wore work gloves. Jordan called me, she said. He's feeding me sanitized logs, no IP but timestamps. He asked me to get involved because he trusts only you and me. I handed her the origami lotus and the green seed. These represent our mission and our failure to protect it." She nodded, placing the seed in a biodegradable cup labeled Truth. I led her to the rear plot where volunteers had planted native lupine. "I want to do a root trace," I said, "on our code and on the family. Both are tangled. We'll start with Codebase 2.1. She smiled, warm and resolute. "Let's start digging." Under the sodium vapor lamps, Jordan joined us via holo projection, his digital silhouette hovering among the seedlings. We reviewed the breach data. The SSH key used at 3:02 a.m. was traced to Nguyen's workstation IP, but the request routed through an anonymity VPN. "He's erasing footprints in real time," Jordan said, "and overlaying Sophie's token to cover his trail." I slammed my hand on the potting bench. "We need live confirmation." I pulled out my phone and dialed Alex Nguyen directly. It rang 7 times. No answer. I left a terse voice message. Alex returned my call immediately. "This concerns Green Cycle's security and your NDA obligations." As I hung up, Maria placed her hand on my shoulder. "Whatever happens, the community believes in you. They'll support transparency." She gestured to the volunteers planting sunflower starts, bright, hopeful heads turned toward the floodlights. "Sunflowers always follow the light. Tonight, you shine a light on the darkness." Just then, my phone lit up with an incoming DM from Sophie's burner account. "Tony, stop digging or face consequences." My blood chilled. I exchanged a look with Maria. This was no longer about finances or family pride. It was extortion, intertwined with digital sabotage. We worked side by side, me in my blazer stained with potting soil, Maria in her apron collecting compost worms, an unlikely duo bridging tech and earth. Jordan patched in live screen share, a joint debugging session. As we monitored process calls and firewall alerts, we saw a new transaction, Ash API v2 admin reset key, executed at 3:45 a.m. This attempt was blocked by our new intrusion prevention rule. My pulse raced. It meant we'd updated our code after the first breach, but Alex or Sophie had tried again, targeting the new security layer. "They're escalating," I muttered. Maria knelt beside a marigold seedling and planted our truth cup into the soil. "Visit it tomorrow," she said. "When the volunteers come, they'll see our seed of transparency sprouting among the flowers." I watched the seed sink into the earth. As it disappeared beneath the soil, I felt a strange calm settle over me. No matter how deep the sabotage, our commitment lay in replanting trust at surface level, open, shared, and resilient. We logged off with Jordan agreeing to gather early at HQ to forensically image Alex's device. Back in my loft, screensaver flicked a sunflower in sunlight, the image Jordan had set hours before. My phone chimed an alert from the community Slack channel, volunteers posting photos of our newly planted seed cup, hashtags #OurTruthSprouts and #GreenCycleStrong. In the solitude of the loft, I sank into the couch, staring at Nina's leaves dancing in the lamp's glow. I dialed Sophie, her number tagged sister, in my phone. It rang and rang until voicemail. I left a final message. "Soph, I'm giving you one last chance to come clean, no matter how ugly. Call me before midnight." I ended the call and looked at the origami lotus perched on the coffee table, its paper edges crisp and pointed like a warning. Tomorrow's sunrise would bring more than dawn. It would bring the reckoning for Alex, for Sophie, for the family and the company I'd built on trust. I closed my eyes, imagining how the seed would break the soil, unfurl its first green leaf, and reach for the light. I woke to the pale pre-dawn light filtering through the loft's industrial windows, the city's fog drifting in like an omen. My phone buzzed, Jordan's message, time-stamped 5:12 a.m. "We have a clean forensic image. Meet at 7. No coffee yet. Adrenaline was my only fuel." As I showered, I replayed Sophie's last voicemails, begging, pleading, blaming technology, and I steeled myself. This morning, I'd confront Alex Nguyen face-to-face, and by nightfall, I'd know whether my company's soul was salvageable. I arrived at Green Cycle HQ, a converted warehouse on SE Division Street. the same space where I once hosted hackathons by day and community dinners by night. Now it felt like a war room. Jordan waited at a folding table under a single fluorescent bulb surrounded by laptops and unmarked boxes. Maria Lee hovered nearby, clipboard in hand, organizing volunteer teams for that afternoon's garden workshop. "Glad you made it," Jordan said, sliding a black evidence hard drive across the table. "We cloned Alex's workstation last night. It's all here. SSH keys, VPN logs, timestamps." He tapped a spreadsheet entry. "Look, 3:02 a.m. and 3:45 a.m. those root overrides. Those match Sophie's API calls exactly, by IP and crypto signature." My pulse hammered. "But Nguyen's VPN masks the source IP." "How do we pin it to his machine?" Jordan pointed to a hex code. "We found a unique TPM signature, your laptop's secure enclave code embedded in the malware." He pulled the private key from your dev machine under the guise of a system audit. "This is someone with admin access and physical access." My head spun. Physical access narrowed the suspect list: me, Jordan, Alex, Maria Lee, and Sophie, who'd visited the HQ once with me 3 months ago for a brand shoot. Could she have slipped into our server room? Or had Alex been working with her? Maria cleared her throat. "Tony, the garden team's counting on us. But whatever this is, we need closure so the community can trust GreenCycle again." Her unwavering calm cut through my panic. She reminded me of Lily, steady hopeful. I nodded, heart heavy. "Let's get Alex here. I need answers now." At exactly 8 a.m., Alex Nguyen strode into the warehouse. He wore his usual gray hoodie and skinny jeans, but today his posture was rigid, shoulders tensed like a man about to step onto a tightrope. He carried a laptop bag slung over one shoulder. "Tony," he said, voice measured. "Jordan, Maria, what's this about?" I motioned to the hard drive. "We imaged your workstation. We have every log entry. We know you used my private SSH key. Explain." Alex's eyes flickered, first shock, then irritation. "You're hacking me. I'm a contractor, not a family member. You have no right to invade my privacy." Jordan cut in. "Your NDA grants us forensic rights if you breach security. And you did." He dropped a single folder on the table, printouts of code showing malware that exfiltrated the key. Alex stared at the folder, then back at me. "I didn't do that." His fingers trembled as he unzipped his bag and pulled out a second laptop, clearly modified. "There's another actor here." I stared at Jordan. "Another actor." Alex shook his head. "That malware wasn't mine. Someone planted it on my machine and on Sophie's burner laptop, too." I found traces in temp folders. I tried to scrub them. My stomach turned. "So you're saying you're innocent?" He closed his eyes, took a deep breath. "I'm a white hat. I exposed a vulnerability in your BNPL integration because I thought Sophie's script was outright fraud. I confronted her. She threatened to leak my personal data. So I deployed an anti-fraud honeypot on my workstation to trace her calls. But someone hijacked it and rewrote the logs to implicate me." The warehouse fell silent. Maria's clipboard lowered, the volunteers paused mid-prep. I paced, mind racing. If Alex spoke truth, then Sophie had both motive and means, plus an accomplice skilled enough to manipulate logs at kernel level. But who? I remembered the night Sophie visited our loft, she stayed late asking me to demo our new API feature. I'd shown her the server room and unguarded back hallway. She could have brought a USB drive, but that still left the coding magic needed to craft kernel-level rootkits. Someone had insider knowledge. I faced Alex. "You said you scrubbed the malware to avoid tampering. Why didn't you report it?" He looked pained. "Because I didn't trust you after you went public. I thought you'd scapegoat me." His admission stung. My public stream had painted him as co-conspirator. I swallowed hard. Maybe I did jump too fast. He nodded. "We both made mistakes." Maria stepped forward, ever the mediator. "Let's not tear each other apart. We need a forensic team to comb through both workstations and Sophie's laptop if we can get it." I squared my shoulders. "Maria's right. I'll bring Sophie in." That night, I texted Sophie, "Meet me at HQ midnight." No games. Then I contacted my lawyer to prepare a subpoena for her burner laptop and bank records. I knew it would escalate to legal hell, but if I delayed, the real saboteur would slip away. At home, Lily was waiting by her terrarium now, sprouting a baby fern. She looked up as I entered the living room, makeup smudged from crying over the weekend's drama. "Uncle Tony," she whispered. I sat beside her, brushing her hair back. "Hey, kiddo." Her eyes were red, but she managed a small smile, holding up her latest school drawing, a sunflower and a lotus blooming side by side. Beneath it, in shaky scrawl, truth and growth. I felt a lump in my throat. "That's beautiful, Lily." I kissed her forehead. "You're right. We're going to grow again together." She nodded, clutching the drawing. "Promise?" "Promise," I whispered. As I left to grab coffee, her drawing fluttered on the table, sunflower on one side, origami lotus on the other. Two symbols of resilience, one following the sun, one rising from mud. The next morning at HQ, we reunited, Jordan in security gear, Maria carrying files, Alex pale but resolute. I stood before them. "We have 2 investigations now. Sophie's financial fraud and the deeper rootkit attack. We'll coordinate with the legal team. And if it leads to uncovering someone we never suspected..." I trailed off, eyes locking on Alex. "We'll face it." His gaze was steady. "We will." As we filed into the server room, a glass-walled sanctuary of blinking lights and cooling fans, I paused at the threshold. The humming machinery felt alive, as if it sensed our tension. My hand hovered over the green seed pot I'd brought, in a reminder that even amidst technology's cold logic, life finds a way to sprout. We switched on the forensics workstation, loaded the cloned images, and began triage. I watched Jordan sift through layers of code. Maria read legal protocols on her tablet, Alex monitored network traffic. Hours passed in near silence, punctuated by keyboard clicks and the occasional murmur, "Got something." "Look at this sequence." At 3 p.m., Jordan called a halt. We found a hidden cron job on Sophie's burner laptop set to ping a private S3 bucket every hour. That bucket contains compiled binaries signed with the same TPM ID that altered Alex's logs. I felt my pulse spike. So it was Sophie all along. Jordan tapped a printout, maush bin, bash and sudo, cp, usr, local, bin, guyan test, user, bin, autorun, chichemod, plex, user, bin, autorun, ban, n. He looked at me, brows drawn. She created a tool called Nguyen Test to frame Alex using his own internal test binaries and scheduled it to run at odd hours. She stole your key, set it to execute root overrides, then faked an external hacker scenario. It's classic digital gaslighting. Anger flared through me. I realized the scope. Sophie hadn't merely stolen money, she'd weaponized technology to annihilate 2 lives, mine and Alex's. I pictured her slipping into the server room lights, confident and calculating, planting lines of code like seeds in dark soil. Maria placed a hand on my arm. "The truth is here." I nodded and turned to Alex. "I'm sorry I doubted you." He gave a small, bittersweet smile. "Let's finish this." At 5 p.m., we served Sophie with a subpoena to produce her laptop and financial logs. We watched as she read the email on her burner phone. Her glossy veneer of influencer perfection crumbled in the screen's glow. I felt a pang of regret, but knew regret wouldn't restore the trust she'd destroyed. We filed our final findings into a public GitHub repo, open source, transparent, sealed with my digital signature. I pushed the commit and watched the world download our evidence. As I did, the chat channels lit up, news outlets, investors, community groups chimed in, some angry, some supportive, all hungry for resolution. That night, I returned to my loft, exhausted and raw. Lily was asleep in her bed, and on her bedside table sat the sunflower lotus drawing. I touched it gently, then pinned it to my wall near the green seed pot and Nina the fig. A constellation of symbols, seed, lotus, sunflower, drawing a map of growth through truth. As I lay in bed, I realized 2 things. First, confronting Sophie meant confronting the worst parts of family loyalty and betrayal. Second, exposing a deeper sabotage meant I'd have to rebuild every relationship I'd ever treasured. But the seed had sprouted, the truth, however painful, had taken root. In the quiet darkness, I whispered into the night, "Tomorrow we move from revelation to restoration." We rebuild, we replant, and we rise. I woke to the first chirp of my alarm at 6:00 a.m. muscles sore from yesterday's tension, but my mind sharp as a tack. The oak table was littered with case files, code printouts, and legal memos. I poured a cup of fair trade cold brew, my new morning ritual, then stood in front of the window overlooking Fremont Bridge, fog drifting across Deschutes River like a silent warning. Today was about restoration. I'd spent the previous evening reviewing every line of code, every transaction, every conversation. My board had convened an emergency meeting to discuss the fallout. Investors were anxious, community partners watching with bated breath, and the local press had spun my expose into a morality play. But I felt ready. I'd uncovered the truth. Now I would rebuild on that foundation. By 8:00 a.m., I was back in the warehouse, joined by Jordan, Alex, and Maria. We greeted each other with nods, no small talk, only purpose. On the whiteboard, we'd written reconciliation, roadmap, trust, accountability, growth. Beneath it, 3 columns, company, community, and family. Today's task: move each point one step forward. 1. Company reboot. Governance. Jordan started. We need to overhaul our security policy and governance structure. No more single points of failure, no more brother-sister co-ownership of keys. He outlined a multi-tiered permission model, biometric 2FA for root access, and an immutable audit trail stored on-chain for transparency. I listened, nodding. Let's implement quarterly security audits with rotating third-party firms, and every hackathon entry must pass a privacy impact assessment. I scribbled in the company column, revised security protocol and transparent audit calendar. Alex chimed in, I'll lead a bug bounty initiative, invite white hats to try to break our system. We pay them for every verified exploit. We democratize security. I smiled. This was precisely the ethos I wanted: trust through openness, vulnerability as strength. 2. Community replant, the seed cup. At 10:00 a.m., we loaded the Green Cycle van with shovels, saplings, and solar-powered irrigation kits. Maria organized volunteers for our urban replant event at PCC Community Garden. I hopped into the driver's seat next to Jordan, music off, seriousness on. The garden was already buzzing with neighbors, students, seniors, families, everyone who'd supported us since day one. Maria greeted the crowd. Today we replant our symbol of truth, the green seed cup, alongside native huckleberry bushes. She held up the biodegradable cup with our seed. Cheers rose. I stepped forward and addressed the group. Folks, I want to thank you for your patience. This company was built on community trust. Yes, we faced a storm of deceit by someone I thought was family. But today we stand together, shovel in hand, to prove that even after betrayal, we can grow stronger roots. I handed the cup to a 10-year-old volunteer my daughter's age, who carefully placed it in a freshly dug hole. As she patted soil around it, I saw faces softened, hope rekindled. I turned to Maria. Let's plant the lotus next. She nodded, and together we dropped the origami lotus into the water feature, another symbol reborn. 3. Family. The hard conversation. By 1:00 p.m., my phone buzzed with Sophie's lawyer. Ms. Russo is prepared to negotiate restitution. My chest tightened. I'd braced for this moment. I called Maria and Alex aside. I'm about to face my sister in mediation. I need your support. Their solidarity steadied me. At 3:00 p.m., we convened via secure video link with Sophie, her counsel, and my attorney. Sophie's face was drawn, eyes red-rimmed. She began to speak, voice shaking. Tony, I'm sorry. I never intended harm. I thought I could fix things with a genuine apology and repayment plan. I held up a list: restitution demands. It detailed full reimbursement of $25,000 plus interest, coverage of legal fees, and a public apology broadcast via Green Cycle's channels. Then I added 2 community service requirements: 100 volunteer hours at city parks and co-hosting a Green Cycle event to educate on fintech ethics. Sophie paled, but nodded. I accept. Her lawyer interjected. We'd like these terms reduced. I cut him off. Trust is not negotiable. I addressed Sophie directly. You weaponized data-twisted technology to frame Alex and betrayed the values Grandpa instilled in us. If you truly regret it, you'll honor every point. After tense minutes, Sophie agreed, defeat and relief mingling in her tearful eyes. The mediation ended with a fragile accord. I exhaled, shoulders dropping for the first time in weeks. 4. Personal reckoning. Relearning boundaries. By 5:00 p.m. alone in my loft, I sank into the couch. Nina's leaves rustled gently in the evening breeze. I breathed out years of guilt over wanting freedom from family expectations. I closed my eyes and saw Lily's face, her drawing pinned beside the green seed, Truth and Growth. I texted Lily's teacher. Can I attend her celebration tomorrow? She replied. Always, she'll be thrilled. I realized that in saving my company, I'd rediscovered my role as uncle, protector, mentor, friend. My phone pinged Alex's text, "Thanks for believing me. Let's build something better." I tapped and knew we'd forged a stronger bond. 5. Dawn of renewal. That night, I re-recorded a video message, this time not an exposé, but a pledge. To my Green Cycle community, thank you for your trust. We've faced betrayal, but we've grown through transparency. I promise to steward our mission with integrity, accountability, and open collaboration. Let's plant seeds of change together. I uploaded it across every channel: YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn. By midnight, comments flooded in, inspiring. I stand with you. Resilience. My heart swelled. As I turned off the camera, I glanced at the symbols arrayed around me. The lotus submerged in my office fishbowl, Nina's proud leaves, Lily's drawing, and the green seed nestled in its pot. Each represented a stage of this journey, from betrayal to revelation to renewal. I sank into bed, exhaustion lulling me, and dreamt of sunflower fields swaying in golden light, each blossom, a promise that truth, when nurtured unfailingly, turns toward the sun. I woke to the gentle hum of my phone alarm at 5:30 a.m., a habit formed during those tense all-nighters. The dawn light filtered through my loft windows, catching Nina's glossy leaves and the green seed's tiny first sprout poking through the soil. Today was the final act: legal settlement, community celebration, and a private reckoning with the family I'd almost lost. 6:00 a.m., finalizing restitution. I poured hot tea into a chipped mug. Family first emblazoned on its side, irony off-kilter, and settled at the oak table with my attorney Elena Choi and Sophie's counsel. On the table lay 2 bound agreements. One detailed Sophie's obligations, full repayment of $25,000 plus 8% interest, completion of 100 volunteer hours, public apology on Green Cycle's channels, and attendance at FinTech ethics workshops. The second was a non-disparagement clause: neither party would tarnish the other's name after completion. Sophie entered the room, no entourage, just her shoulders squared, eyes clear. A far cry from the panicked figure of last week. She extended her hand. Tony, I mean every word. I'm sorry. I clasped it firmly. Let's issue joint statements. Both of us committed wrongs. Yours betrayed trust. Mine exposed you publicly before full facts. We heal faster together. Elena nodded and guided us through the signatures. The pen scratched across the page, a compact of accountability and hopefully forgiveness. 8:30 m. Community Harvest Festival. Outside, the Portland drizzle had turned to mist, a perfect backdrop for the Truth and Growth Harvest Festival in Ladd's Addition Community Garden. Volunteers and neighbors gathered beneath white tents strung with solar fairy lights. Maria Lee led a sunflower planting ceremony around the green seed bed. Each attendee pressed a seed into freshly turned soil. I distributed shovels and shared one-on-one smiles, feeling the collective heartbeat of a community choosing renewal over resentment. On stage next to the raised bed installation, Sophie and I co-hosted a data integrity versus soil integrity talk. She spoke candidly about misusing technology. I spoke about protecting ecosystems and, by extension, human trust. The Q&A was raw. Residents asked tough questions. How can we trust your startup now? To which I replied, by demonstrating consistent transparency, open audits, and community involvement. Trust isn't a product feature, it's a living relationship. 11:45 a.m. Legal wrap and press. Back at HQ, our legal team released a joint statement and evidence repository link. Press inquiries flooded in TechCrunch's headline read, Green Cycle replants trust after insider sabotage, while local outlets spotlighted Sophie's restitution efforts. I watched the media cycle with cautious optimism, knowing reputation rebuilds slower than code patches. I gave succinct interviews, always circling back to the symbols, the green seed, the lotus in the fishbowl, the sunflowers in the garden. Metaphors for truth taking root and rising through adversity. 2:00 p.m. Investor check-in. Investors called. Next, cautious encouragement, conditional continued funding, dependent on hitting security milestones and community engagement metrics. I assured them we'd implemented quarterly external audits, a decentralized governance council, including community representatives, and a public security dashboard updated in real time. They grumbled about previous leaps of faith, but ultimately agreed Green Cycle's mission and our resilience merited continued support. 4:30 p.m. Family reconciliation. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house in Northeast Portland, a craftsman bungalow redolent of garlic Sunday dinners. The front yard now boasted a cluster of sunflowers I'd gifted at the festival. My mom, Elena Russo, came to the door holding a wooden bowl she'd carved for me in her woodworking class, a welcome home offering. Dad stood behind her, arms folded, but eyes soft. We stepped into the living room where Sophie sat on the couch drawing Lily's sunflower lotus design on a scratch pad. The air was thick with unspoken history. I took a deep breath. Mom, Dad, Sophie, we've signed the settlement. Sophie's regained her footing through restitution, and we're rebuilding trust. Mom dabbed her eyes. Your father and I were wrong to rush to her defense without evidence. We see that now. Tony, I'm proud of how you stood for truth. Dad nodded, voice trembling. Family first, but truth and responsibility must come first, too. Sophie placed her scratch pad on the coffee table. I turned my back on our values. I'm sorry for betraying you and everyone who believed in me. I sat beside her and hugged her. The awkwardness melted into quiet relief. Lily dashed in from the back room, scrubbing paint off her palms, and leapt into my arms. Her innocent joy was balm to every wound. Uncle Tony, can I water Nina? I smiled through tears. You sure can, kiddo. 6:00 p.m. Reflective pause. Back at HQ. The warehouse empty now, except for our team. I wandered past the server racks, still humming with guarded life. The audit logs blinked on my screen, immutable encrypted records of every misstep and every corrective action. I thought of Alex Nguyen, whose tech expertise had been miscast as a weapon, but ultimately became a shield. I tapped out a quick message. Alex joined me for dinner. We've earned a break. 7:30 p.m. A toast to tomorrow. Later, at the festival's twilight bonfire community, members gathered for cider and vegan donuts. I raised a mug. To truth, sometimes bitter, always necessary. And to growth, sometimes slow, always rewarding. Glasses chimed. The firelight danced on faces united by shared toil and shared triumph. I looked up at the strings of solar lights overhead, each flickering in the mist like a promise. Open-ended conclusion. As the embers glowed, I realized our journey wasn't over. Legal appeals could arise, investor patience might fray, and family dynamics would need ongoing care. But tonight, we had planted seeds in Oregon soil, seeds of trust, transparency, and consequence. Whether they bloom into a forest of integrity remains to be seen. I turned to Maria, who smiled knowingly. The soil's ready. What we choose to plant next is up to us. I nodded. Heart full, mind racing. Could GreenCycle scale these values globally? Could Sophie rebuild her brand without shortcuts? Could I balance compassion and accountability when tomorrow beckoned with new challenges? The mist swirled around the bonfire as the crowd dispersed, and I stood alone watching the smoke rise, an echo of every promise and every lesson learned.